All right, perfect. So welcome everyone. Appreciate you all attending our 9th Internet to Net Plus webinar session. Gonna just introduce myself again, even though I feel like most of you already know who I am. But I'm Leighton Spencer. I work here at Google as a Google Workspace for Education specialist. And then today we will be diving into a lot of the end user features that are made available in our teaching and learning upgrade and our Plus editions. These features really benefit end users within your institution and can create a collaborative and easy to use space kind of for all individuals as well. So this session will be shedding light on the most important enhancements that are made available within these two paid editions and how you as admins can enable them so that your users can kind of make the most out of the investment that your institution has made. So I think one of the big things with the agenda, as all of these sessions have been, it is pretty dense, but we're going to fly through as many of these features and functionalities as possible. We're going to kick it off with a quick overview of the tools and services. A lot of this is a repeat of a couple of past sessions. We'll also point to those other sessions for if you do want additional details on those, but we will cover that, that overview of the tools. We'll then touch on the security-related end-user features. From there, we'll pivot and dive into the productivity tools that are made available in teaching and learning and in Education Plus editions, and how those make collaboration more efficient. We'll share some very helpful takeaway resources and other tools that you all can utilize in your own time. And then, if time permits, we will have a Q&A session at the end as well. So from there, let's jump into the overview of the end user tools in our paid editions. So as you know, most of you know, and we've covered these editions in some detail in a number of the other past editions. Today, we will be focusing on Google Workspace for Education Plus, which is built on top of our no-cost Fundamentals edition and includes everything that you receive within our Standard edition and our Teaching and Learning Upgrade edition. And we'll also be focusing on tools that are made available within the Teaching and Learning Upgrade edition. So this is primarily focused around those end user enhancements that a student, a faculty, a staff member can utilize in their everyday work. So here's the overview of the security functionality that gets unlocked with Plus. So if you remember correctly, Plus is the only one that has security functionality as well as end user tools unlocked. As our comprehensive solution, teaching and learning licenses do not get access to anything within on this page or within this table of contents. So today we're going to be diving into the tools that appear from an end user perspective and are highlighted in yellow and kind of hyperlinked in yellow. With Plus, end users can find files more easily, organize internal files, automatically populate department groups. Users can restrict file sharing, create audiences for internal file sharing, and then leverage client-side encryption as well if you all kind of offer that for your end users. These tools will require admins to turn on functionality, and a lot of these tools also require a Plus license be assigned to that specific end user to access. And as you can see, there are a lot of other benefits within Plus licenses for security. We covered a lot of those in our last Google-led session, which was Safe and Secure webinar, which we had 2 weeks ago. But with all that being said, you'll still be able to kind of access a lot of these slides that aren't hyperlinked in this deck in a takeaway resource that we have at the end of our presentation as well. And then the next piece that we'll dive into as well is we will be touching on the following functionalities that enhance your end user's productivity within Workspace. Starting off with Originality Reports, which is Google's plagiarism detection tool. With Plus, assigned to your professors or faculty, they will actually have unlimited access to this tool. So they also can grant access to students if they so see fit to help make this more of a learning tool and not necessarily a punitive one. We will explore how you can actually set up a lot of those functionalities and features, as well as how you can set up document approvals within docs, sheets, and slides. And then lastly, we'll touch on a lot of the premium features that are made available within Google Meet for those who are still remote or in a hybrid work environment. But next up, Ken is going to introduce himself, and then we'll take us through the security enhancements in a bit more detail. So Ken, take it away.
Thanks, Leighton. Hi, everyone. I don't know if many of you know me, but I'm Ken Matthews. I'm the Workspace for Education Solutions Engineer on the team, and I work with all of you in North America around any questions that you have related to our products when it comes to technical aspects. I also apologize earlier for not being a good steward of Meet protocol by not turning off my microphone and sneezing in the middle of Leighton's call. So apologize for that, but let's dive into the security enhanced end user tools. And these are going to be functionalities that you can enable for your end users, as well as manage from an admin perspective that will secure your environment. Many of these we've actually already gone over in previous Internet 2 calls, but something that we can highlight here as well, just so you can to see it as well. And the first one is actually something that we're going to be introducing for the first time in terms of this Internet 2 call is cloud search. So you may find that your users need to navigate the ability to find documents across many of our applications, our native applications, whether that's Gmail, chat, or in Drive itself, or via Docs, Sheets, and Slides. And they can leverage cloud search to do this. It's somewhat of a workspace-specific intranet, and it allows you to search across all of our native applications, or a lot of our native applications, to find things. So a student or a staffer may come up to you and say, hey, I need to track down a student's financial aid documents that were submitted through Gmail, chat, and Docs. How do I do that across the entirety of the domain? They can do this from their laptop, from their mobile phone, from their tablet, if you as an administrator allow this. And we can also integrate this with third-party resources or third-party applications. So like there was a need for your research team to be able to dig into or search across GCS Google Cloud Storage buckets. That is a potentiality. I will mention, and there are some resources at the end of this deck that will lead you to this, but I'll mention that there is some requirements around that. You do have to have a minimum of 500 licenses plus licenses to be able to enable that, and work with a cloud search partner. There's some links in this deck that show you who our partners are as it relates to this. But that'll unlock this functionality. You can talk to Leighton and myself, or Ann and myself, about this, or support to be able to see if that's something that interests you. But it'll also index those third-party repositories via our APIs. Much of the connectors that are needed to be able to integrate into that are developed by third parties. There is a connector library that we'll be sharing, but just something to consider, especially given the distributed nature of all of the applications that many higher educations are dealing with today. And in the next slide, this is just essentially going to tell you how to go about enabling cloud search. Super simple, like any other service. You go into the admin console under Menu, Apps, and Google Workspace, click on the service status of cloud search, and you can turn it on for everyone in your organization. Only licensed users will be able to leverage this, or you can scope that to a particular organizational unit or an access group. Remember that access groups are additive, so you would have to turn it on at the off at the OU level, and only can you turn it on at the access group level. You can't do the reverse. Next, you may see that there is a need, and we actually touched on this in the storage webinar, but you may see that there's a need to organize data within Drive using metadata such as labels. So you may have somebody come up to you saying, hey, I need to apply labels or sensitivity labels to my institution's files, my department's files, because we have compliance requirements. We don't want them to be shared. We can leverage DLP against those particular labels. And just maybe overall, we want to improve our file organization across the board. And this is where labels can come in. You as administrators can enable this, and then your users with a license can actually leverage those labels by adding those labels to particular files. Everybody in your domain, regardless of license, can actually view those labels. But in order for users to partake in using the labels that are defined by the admin or the label managers within your label admins within your environment, they would need to have a license. So there may be a need to organize sensitive higher education files like student records or financial records or human resource records, or even research data if it contains intellectual property or proprietary information. Where the security aspect comes in is you can use that label as a condition within a DLP rule, saying that all of these top secret files, for instance, should not be shared externally according to this DLP rule if they have that particular label applied to the file. You'll see here that in order to enable those as an administrator, you go into the admin console, and the actual label functionality is going to be under Drive and Docs. I actually briefly went over this in the storage webinar, so if you want to go back into this particular section of that recording, you can. You're going to select labels, you're going to turn them on, and that's going to open up the label manager for the admins or anybody with the privilege to be able to create labels. And then you can go ahead and you can start creating labels. You have 150 labels available. One of those is going to be a badge label that you see from this screenshot here. The rest are standard labels. Badge labels have the ability to let your end users, based on the permission of the label, let your end users choose certain fields within that label, in this case, a top secret field. And that gives some of your users in your environment some modicum of control in terms of how they would like to label those going forward if you had a badge label of, say, file sensitivity. And then you might also need to have a situation where one of your admins comes up to you and says, hey, I'm frustrated with having to add members into a group every single time we get new educators that come in. We have this educator list. It's a manual effort. I'm tired of running the API every single time, or having to run that API every single time to do that. You could begin to leverage something called dynamic groups within the environment. And this is essentially going to keep, based on the conditions that you specify, this is going to keep membership automatically updated without you having to run that against any API calls or anything like that. Essentially, it's going to be based on a query that you set, and you'll see in the next slide how that works out. Dynamic groups can be used for email and distribution lists. They can be used to for moderated groups. They can be used for collaboration inboxes. They can also be used for security groups, which is essentially a tag that you place as an administrator when you create the group on that dynamic group, and then that will expose that group for any policy settings within the admin console. So, for instance, you want to create a group based off of a dynamic group based off of a custom attribute of users within your environment that can create shared drives. You could potentially create that and then use that against the setting within the admin console, as an example. It's really simple how to turn these on. It's under the directory, under groups. It's just another type of group. You create a dynamic group versus a standard group. And as you can see from the screen share here, the condition we're choosing is a department, and this department is engineering. It could be the math department, the science department. Once you put in your field, you'll see that there is a common expressions language a field that shows you how that how that query works out. You place the name, the description, the group email. You can preview the members of that list prior to creating it, save, and done, and that membership, based on any conditions that you specify, will be updated. It's important to note that you can also use custom attributes. So if you have any attributes that are coming over from Active Directory, for instance, through Google Cloud Directory Sync, or from your upsource IDP or database that you're syncing via the directory API, you could potentially leverage that to create dynamic groups within the Workspace environment. You can also use OU membership. That is a condition that you can use. So you can use OU membership in all sub-OUs, or just the parent OU if you want. Where that comes into play, that specific OU membership comes into play, is within target audiences. And target audiences, which I believe I mentioned in the security webinar, allows you to scope sharing boundaries based on link sharing. So as we all know, the default is I can share with everybody in the university. There might be an instance where the staff comes up to you and says, hey, this document is shared with everybody in the university, and that's putting some sensitive data at risk. How can I limit that? And this is where we would go to with target audiences, which is a specific plus and standard feature. Essentially, you as admins will be able to create the target audiences, and your users will then see those based on the assignments that you create. So you can remove that default university share with everybody in the university and specify particular smaller groups, whether it's students or faculty or staff or other members of the administration, so that those users only see those options when they go into the link sharing settings. And how you go about doing that is in the menu, admin console menu, directory, target audiences. You create that target audience, you create the name, and you add members. Now, where dynamic groups come into play here is you could actually create a dynamic group based on OU membership, say everybody in my students OU and all of the sub OUs underneath, and that will be my students group, dynamic group. and then I can add that group to the target audience, and that membership will continuously be updated based on the dynamic group. So that would also affect the target audience. So everybody in the student OUs would constantly be updated in that target audience. Something to consider in terms of automating that process. And next we have restricting file sharings. I talked about this in the security webinar, and this is going to be Drive trust rules. So you may want to prevent faculty research data from being shared with other departments within your institution, or just generally not being shared externally at all. And you don't want to rely on DLP specifically or solely for that. You can actually create sharing boundaries. It's important to note that you can create policies. Once you've enabled this, you can create policies for individual users. You can create policies for groups, for organizational units, for trusted domains. So there's a lot of granularity in terms of building off of what was just the standard on-off that you saw with Drive sharing. You can begin to create really granular policies here. And this is going to help you protect sensitive information to maintain any compliance standards that you may come up against. It's also going to allow you to restrict internal or external domain sharing as you see fit. You can create a trust rule to allow a specific department to share Drive files with the university, or maybe just internal to that department only. Once you enable the trust rules, which we'll see here, the existing sharing options within Drive will become default trust rules. They will be active at the moment you enable those trust rules. You can actually go in and create other trust rules and disable those if your other trust rules after testing is something that you want to move forward with. Here there are multiple ways to enable trust rules. You can do it through the Drive settings, but here we're showing that you could just go into menu rules, and under the collaborate securely card, you can see turn on trust rules if they're not already on. And then if you see here, once they're turned on and you manage or monitor the task list process, you'll actually see those default rules come in, which essentially means that anybody internal can share with anybody internal, and anybody external, internal users can share with people external with a warning. That's essentially what those two rules are. And then I believe the next thing is client-side encryption. So this is the last one for me, but you may find that you have higher standards than just the standard cryptographic methods that come with Google Workspace. It's important to note that all of our data is encrypted at rest and in transit. This is standard for all Workspace, but you may have a higher level. You may have ITAR compliance needs that you need to abide by. And this is where you could potentially leverage client-side encryption, where you as admins actually control using a key service that you provider that you want. You actually control those keys. So Google doesn't actually have any a way to be able to see into this file. The encryption actually takes place within the browser before that data is actually stored within our cloud storage environment. And you can, as well as turning this service on, you can also choose which users have the ability via OU or group, have the ability to encrypt particular files. The process is intense, but it is a valuable service. Essentially, it's a 5-step process where you're going to leverage an existing key service like a FlowCrypt or a Virtru. Once you've managed that particular area or environment of setting that up, you can then add that particular key service URL into the admin console, ensure that that environment is communicating correctly with Google Workspace, and then you're going to want to turn it on for the entirety of the organization, or turn on the key service at the OU or the group level. At that point, you also want to make sure that your integration with your third-party IDP is set up correctly, as most of you already have set up correctly, so that that identity, the identity is authenticated prior to encrypting those files. You want to make sure that all parties involved are communicating in that regard. And then we're going to enable it for specific users, and you can do that via the OU or the group level. So you as admins have the ability, once the key service is set up, you have the ability to say this particular group of users, maybe in the finance department or a research department, has the ability to encrypt those files. And then the end users will have this experience that you see in the screenshot here. If they want to create a new doc, they can essentially do that by creating a new doc and choosing the encrypted option. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass it back over to Leighton to finish us out with the productivity tools.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you, Ken. A lot of detail there. I think a lot was review, but still some great pieces just to highlight there and how end users interact with a lot of the security side of these tools. We're going to be diving into, on this next kind of section, the enhanced collaboration and productivity tools that are made available within Workspace as well, specifically, again, for those teaching and learning licensed users or those who have Plus licensed assigned. So I think this next piece is going to be around Originality Reports. So I did mention at the top of the call today that Originality Reports is our version of plagiarism detection. It uses the power of Google search against billions of different websites and millions of different books to compare students' work to detect the originality of that work. Another piece, because I know that this comes up a lot for around Originality Reports and plagiarism detection, is we do recognize that our customers are looking for additional tools to assist them in evaluating academic integrity, especially when it comes to determining whether a student has used generative AI like Google Bard, ChatGPT, or similar services in the process of kind of creating and reviewing submissions of work as well. So currently, our product team is evaluating the product capabilities to support our customers and educators with that challenge. It is extremely important for us that plagiarism analysis software is accurate and minimizes risk of bias and then also false positives. So that's one of the big things that our product team is really looking into, making sure that we build in first before releasing anything along those lines. So with all that being said, we want Originality Reports to be, for you all to be confident that it won't report false positives and kicking off wrongful plagiarism investigations. So at the moment, Originality Reports does not detect if content was generated by ChatGPT, Bard, or any other generative AI technologies. The reason for that as well is for what I mentioned earlier. And then also, AI and these services actually create text that didn't necessarily already exist within the web. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to detect. But it is something still that you can actually enable for all of your end users and for your educators as well, as a tool that can scan for plagiarism on work that already exists on the internet, as well as testing it against student work that has already been turned in as well. So with that, I'll kind of get into some of those additional pieces. So if you're actually looking to scan a doc, slide, or Microsoft Word document for plagiarism, with Plus licenses or teaching and learning licenses, you can actually provide that to your end users. So they have access to unlimited reports and can even compare student to student work in a school-owned repository versus a public-owned repository that are often offered in other plagiarism detection tools. So with Originality Reports, you still own your data, and Google is taking on the responsibility to keep that private and secure. From here, you can scan for plagiarism by following these steps kind of detailed here. I understand the majority of higher education customers do not use Google Classroom, but luckily we're actually able to utilize a couple other ways to actually scan for plagiarism detection within Originality Reports within Workspace for Education. So you can actually use Originality Reports with your current LMS by utilizing Google Assignments. This allows you to connect Google Workspace into a number of leading LMS platforms that are on the market today. And turning this feature on is as simple as signing into your LMS and enabling Originality Reports under the Assignments tab. Comparing past student work to current student work and turning in assignment is also another simple process. With Originality Reports, you can securely store student work in a private school-owned repository, making it easy for you all or your educators to actually look back on past student works that were potentially turned in. This, again, is a fairly straightforward process as well. It just requires you turning this feature on by accessing your admin console, going to the app section and selecting assignments, and then enabling the tool for your educators OU or a specific group that you have set up for those users too. I believe the last section that we have underneath Originality Reports as well is, as an educator with a Plus license assigned, you can access unlimited Originality Reports versus, I think, 5 per course with fundamentals licenses. Your educators can also enable Originality Reports for their students, allowing students the opportunity to check any unsighted text and giving them a chance to actually correct any mistakes before officially turning in their work. This provides students with more of a learning opportunity versus a punitive plagiarism detection investigation, and can actually change a lot of behaviors for students, helping them understand how to correctly cite work and move forward with properly, giving credit to where they pulled that information from. So another great tool that your end users can actually turn on for students as well if they are utilizing Originality Reports within their courses. And here's how your educators and students can take advantage of that functionality. We also have linked in a lot of the corners of each of these slides the help articles and guides that can provide end users with how they can actually use this tool, or even admins on how you can actually enable this for your end users to utilize. So all of these actually have very helpful guides that detail each of the processes within the slides. And again, those are going to be made available here at the end of the call on the registration site too. I think just to kind of switch from Originality Reports, now we're going to move into document approvals. The next item I think is going to be a little bit more relevant for executive teams at your university or college. And it's really within collaboration within doc sheets and slides. With the ability to have approval processes on internal documents without the use of costly workflow tools can save on IT budgets, as well as third-party management, and save you all time as admins from having to manage many different tools and services. You can actually just streamline that within Google Workspace. With this process enabled, reviewers can actually approve, reject, or leave comments on a document directly within Drive, Docs, or other Workspace tools. Approvers can also follow a link and get started from there as well, and have kind of those same access capabilities applied to approvers as well. And then lastly, it allows for the institution to manage the number of workflows that are required, within a collaborative, decision, or just a document that needs to be kind of signed off on before publications are made complete. So really, really helpful to kind of utilize this for any internal documents that need to be stamped off and approved by a number of different executives or a number of different departments or leaders. Just streamlining that collaboration and then changing real time what needs to be changed if there are comments that are left from a specific department or a specific end user. So another great tool just to enable for your users, and a lot of unique use cases on how approvals within internal documents can be used. And as an admin, you can turn this service on by signing into your admin console, going into the app section. Under Drive and Docs, you will see the approval item. You can actually select this for a specific OU or group as well. You click to save, and your users that are licensed with Plus will be able to access this functionality. So a key thing just to utilize across the board, and a lot of interesting use cases, as I mentioned, on how your users can actually use this in a number of different ways. The next item that we're going to dive into is all around the premium features of Google Meet. So the platform that we're currently using right now, and how your end users gain a lot of functionality by having Plus licenses assigned. So with Plus licenses within Google Meet, or teaching and learning licenses within Google Meet, you can have transcriptions of everything that was said. This helps obviously within a classroom, but also helps in executive meetings, since you no longer need someone keeping the minutes. Meet will actually do that automatically once it is turned on and enabled. The host of the meeting will need to have a Plus license assigned, but others who attend the meeting might not necessarily have to have a Plus license assigned in order for this to work. It is super, super easy to actually turn on that functionality. So from an end user perspective, it's similar to a lot of other premium features within Meet. So you actually make your way over to our, I believe it's called our activities section, and that's our where you can actually see, and it's three shapes. It's the triangle, square, and circle. And once you click on that, you'll actually be able to see a list of functionalities and features, and you just click on the one in this case, which would be transcriptions, to where you actually can just turn that on from that perspective as well. Some other tools that are really cool within Google Meet is utilizing live translations to deepen inclusion, and then also make language barriers a thing of the past with those translations happening in real time. Translated captions can translate English to or from French, German, Portuguese, or Spanish, and can also translate English to Japanese, Mandarin, or Swedish. So this, again, is something that you can test out real time in the remainder of this Meet. It, again, is a fairly easy feature to use from an end user perspective. All you have to do is hit the three dots right next to the hang up button, hit settings and then captions, turn on captions, and then select the language of the meeting. Then you turn on translated captions, and you can actually select the language that you would like to see. So if you can read along in another language, I'd suggest trying it out as we finish off this presentation. I will say it is super accurate when it comes to translations or just our general captions in general. It is very accurate with catching exactly what's being said and kind of dictating that across the bottom of the page here. The other piece, I think, with Meet, so a lot within Meet, live streaming. I think that this is another feature that becomes unlocked and available with both Plus and Teaching and Learning upgrade licenses. With Teaching and Learning, you can access up to 10,000 viewers within a live stream, and or for our Plus customers, you can actually live stream up to 100,000 individuals. You have the ability to select where and who has access to these live streams. So you can do one that's just in domain. You can do one that's just across other trusted domains, or you can actually have one that's publicly hosted via YouTube. So events that we've heard or use cases that we've seen utilizing live streaming have been items like graduation, sporting events, orientations, or even guest speakers that are potentially coming to campus, and you wanted to publicly live stream that to your alumni or to parents or guardians or other individuals who may also want to hear from that speaker. So really unique and cool piece that's built into Plus and Teaching and Learning. There's no additional cost associated with this. It's just something that you have access to and can use. I will say, if you are going to be utilizing the public live streaming functionality, please just allow for 24 hours of an activation period for the specific YouTube account or YouTube channel that you're going to use if you don't already have one set up. So that's just one quick call out. Just wanted to make clear, just allow for that 24-hour activation period. But with live streaming, you can also have a number of the same features that are available within Google Meet, like recording capabilities, having captions, running polls, having Q&A, and all of those pieces that are also attributed within a normal Google Meet. But truly a wonderful addition to your Workspace paid editions, and something that we've seen a lot of customers get some significant value from. Here are the steps to actually creating a live stream. So they're kind of detailed here. Before these actions can be completed by your users, it's important to remember that they must have a Plus license assigned to them, and the admin must enable that service for their use. Again, if you're going to be utilizing public live streaming, that would also require the turning on of the YouTube additional service. So just another kind of caveat there, but that is something to keep in mind. And you can see all relevant Help Center articles in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide as well, which have a number of useful resources and more information on how you can set that up and how your users can use it. And I think we're getting towards the tail end of my section, but also within Google Meet, the ability to actually gather information through polls. So co-hosts or moderators can save a poll for later use in a meeting and make it public once it is the right time. So I actually just clicked one right here, and it should actually populate for you all, which I had saved earlier in this presentation. But after the meeting, an emailed report of the poll's results are automatically shared with the moderator as well. So this is something where you can make those answers anything you want. I tend to use fairly positive language, so I didn't have any "this is not cool," but that is just a functionality that's also available and can be used in many different ways as well. And then I think it's fairly straightforward to use a feature like this as well. Like many of the other Google enhancements to Meet, they're found in that activities section. They are, fairly user-friendly and accessible as possible. And the steps on how you actually turn on that feature can be seen on this slide, as well as some help articles that are in that bottom right-hand corner as well. And then lastly, I think in this session, we will detail attendance tracking across Google Meet. So this can show the moderator or the host who attended. And one additional important item as well is for how long they attended that session. So the same goes for live streams, that this can actually be turned on for those kind of sessions. I think from a session like this, you can kind of see who attended for the full time, who came in late, what sections they potentially missed, and things like that, as well as in a classroom or course lecture kind of perspective. It can be helpful for those who are either in a hybrid learning environment or remote, on what content they potentially need to focus on from the professor's perspective or from that end user's perspective. So you can enable this, again, within the call or from the calendar invite before the call. So to the right, you also see the view of the report that is shared with the moderator after the call. So it will actually show you, the peaks of when most people were on the call, when, majority have dropped off. It will also kind of have a number of other features like the amount of time or average time that users were on and things like that. For more information on this, we've also linked the help article in the details below. But I think from there, that's pretty much all from the end user side. I think we skipped over a couple items like recording and Q&A, since you all are fairly familiar with those as we've been using them in this session. But we'll now be reviewing the resources that can really help you understand the teaching and learning enhancements within Plus and the teaching and learning upgrade licenses. So just some things, just right off the bat, I think, and we probably don't highlight it enough, but is our help center. So 9 times out of 10, this is the place to understand our products in deeper detail, or how you can actually utilize them from your admin role, or even from an end user perspective. So really key things, I think, are found within that help center, as well as each of the products that we went through today, or each of the functionalities that we went through today. Each slide within this deck will have the specific help center article tied to it. So whether it's how your end users can actually use those tools, or how admins can allow the tools to be used, they're going to be kind of covered in each one of those slides. So if you have any additional questions, be sure to check out the deck once we share it. Next, we have our IT admin resource landing page. So this is a wonderful resource that helps admins understand the paid editions, or get additional insights on things, like trainings and things that we're actually going to be covering on Thursday in that session. So it's definitely worth checking out, but I think really, really cool resource. I think everyone on this call would benefit from just taking a look at it and kind of clicking around. And then lastly, we have 3 great resources. So the first is our 40+ ways to use Google Workspace for education paid editions. The deck we presented today is actually an iteration of that deck. So a lot of things that you saw on those first couple slides where we didn't have them hyperlinked are hyperlinked in this deck. And you can definitely kind of go into a lot more detail on what wasn't covered today within there. Again, if you ever have any questions on anything, never hesitate to reach out to your Google representative. And I know our team is happy to kind of assist you in any way we can. And then the last two that we have here are helpful links for cloud search. So this was what Kenneth specifically mentioned at the top of his session, where you can actually utilize this for your end users to search across Workspace itself. So that's like Gmail, Drive, chat, all of those functionalities, or calendar, as well as the ability to potentially plug in third-party tools, which takes a couple extra steps in order to turn that functionality on. But these are just some helpful links that kind of detail that process too. But that I think brings us to the end of today's session. I know we have a little bit of time to answer some Q&A pieces, but again, we want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to attend this webinar session. We appreciate each of you for kind of coming in live and then asking the questions that you have. We do have one more session taking place on Thursday, April 27th. This session will cover all the free training items that are available to admins and end users from a Google perspective. It will also detail some of the other resources that you can take advantage of, from our Google innovators to our partner network. So we just wanted to thank you again, and we appreciate you all taking the time, and we will dive into any questions that we have. So Ariel, you can stop the recording.